we are back. So, in this segment of episode number 2 of Cracking the Shell, I'm going to talk about number 1, the late game transitions, mid-late game transitions of this early Gateway Immortal composition. Number 2, I'm going to cover how you scout for and counter this build as Zerg, and essentially how you deal with it, both with the aggression and transitioning into the late game. And number 3, I'm going to introduce the next episode of the show. That's going to be next week, Monday, I believe. Yeah, it should be. Exact same time, exact same place. First of all, Dreno C, thank you for the follow, sir. I really appreciate that. But anyway, continuing forth. So transitioning into the late game out of this build is actually really easy. Because you're set up for a third base with your aggression on the map, when you have map control with that amount of units, he can't feasibly move out onto the map with enough units that you can't just walk into his base and kill him. And at the same time, he can't necessarily send a few units. Like, if he sends enough units that you're scared enough to go home, you have recall. That's what the Mothership Core is for. But if he does send a small pack of units, you can always warp in stuff at home. You have a forge already for the cannons, and with your upgrades, with your upgrade advantage, you should be able to deal with the harassing units fairly easily. So, since you're able to set yourself up on such an easy third base, and you already have Twilight Tech as well as Robo, you're set up for a lot of things into the late game. You're playing a very reactionary style at that point, which is something that Protoss doesn't normally do. It's generally Protoss dictating the game with which tech they go, and then the other races having to react to that, such as having to go Vikings if they scout Colossus, or having to go into Broodlords if they scout a lot of Colossus. That sort of thing. So, where we go from here, you need to have some sort of scouting in the Zerg space. You need to have an Observer, or some Hallucinated Phoenix, or even like DTs. I already have the Twilight Council. I frequently will throw down a DT shrine just to scout around his base and get drones if I can. If I can get a good scout off with the DT, it doesn't matter if it doesn't kill any workers, because I've just seen everything he's doing. And there are 2 main transitions you need to be scouting for. One is the Spire. If you see a Spire, just throw down a lot of Blink Stalkers, right? Like, you should have around 5 to 8, more than that. You should have around 8 gates off of 3 bases, and you need to be transitioning into a lot of Blink Stalkers. Usually around the 3 base mark, I just start throwing down a lot of tech. Whether or not I use it is negligible. I just throw down a lot of tech so I can be sure. I usually throw down a Stargate and a DT Shrine is what I do, and that's 300, and that'll generally cover my bases over most things. That covers me against mutas, lurkers, broodlords, ultralisks, that sort of thing. It covers a lot of options, and you always have the option to tech switch into that. You can always throw on oracles, that sort of thing. The Stasis Ward is really, really good for map control. But going into the later stages of the game, you definitely do, like, the other transition you need to be scouting for is Hive. If you see him going, like, Infestation Pit, you need to be a little bit wary. Like, he could just be going into Infestors, because Infestors are very good against Gateway units. You can handle Infestors with just Gateway units, though, and Immortals, so you should be fine. But if you scout the Hive, you need to be very, very scout heavy for the next little while to see whether or not he's going Ultralisks. Because if he's going Ultras, you're going to have a bad time with just a pure Gateway Immortal composition. You need a lot more Immortals and a lot more Void Rays, and even some Tempests too. Those are definitely the strongest transitions against Ultralisks. Now, the question comes, what if he doesn't transition out of his mid-game tech? Well, neither does the Protoss. And that wasn't an option before. That was never an option before. It was purely, if he stays on mid-game tech, you need Colossus or you need Storm or you're screwed. Well, with the Adept and with things like Warp Prisms, how they work now, the new economy changes, all that sort of stuff, it contributes very heavily to the Protoss staying on the same tier composition as their opponent. If you see them sticking on Roach Hydra or even Roach Hydra Viper, don't be afraid to just stick on your Gateway Immortal composition. Throw on Archons if you need to, but don't be afraid to stay on your tier 2-ish composition. You do need to micro that very well though, and very carefully, because if you lose too much, you could be screwed. If you take one bad engagement, you could be screwed, but you can definitely win with that. Now, that really is the extent of the late game transitions, because the build sets you up so well for the late game. You already have all your Twilight upgrades. You already have +3 and +1 armor and +1 shields. So you can easily transition into both ground-based armies and air-based armies with the shield upgrades. And on top of that, you already have a lot of your tech structures. You should have Twilight Council, Robo, Stargate, and DT Shrine. That means you have access to Archons, Immortals, Void Rays, Oracles, Phoenix, as well as every Gateway unit. Now, you can throw down easily from that things like Fleet Beacon, Templar Archives. You have so much tech. You can tech switch so quickly because you have all of the tech structures. Now, how do you counter this as Zerg? Well, first of all, how do you scout for it? You go into his base and you see a forge. That's it. You go into his base and you see a double gas into forge. Simple. It's not a complex build. It's not like you see a double gas and you're like, oh god, is he going proxy Stargate? No, he's got a forge. You know what he's doing. It's fairly simple. Now, in the mid game, okay, well in the early mid game, it's going to be very difficult. You're not going to have a whole lot of units if you've played greedy. You're not going to have a whole lot of upgrades if you've played greedy. The only thing I can suggest is if you see this build early enough, before like he's got 3 gateways and 2 bases, you need to throw down your Roach Warren immediately. You need to get Roach Speed and at least like a Spine Crawler, because you need something to hold against that the early mid game push and to deal with that sort of thing. You need to have some units on the field. A lot of Speedlings as well is very, very good against that, because if you get a full surround on the Gateway Force, then they're going to have a very hard time, probably be forced to recall out, and that's another bit of time you've bought yourself. You also need to try and get up in the upgrades as quickly as possible. Try and catch up if you can. It's not always going to be an option, but you do need to try and get some upgrades on the field. Ravagers are also very good against this style, even though they're a little bit garbage in this meta right now with how Blizzard's changed them. They're still a very, very good unit in zoning out the Protoss army. If you have enough Ravagers, you have pretty much constant Corrosive Bile, and that means you can put a line of Corrosive Bile down and the Protoss player has to back up, and that's another bit of time you've bought yourself. As long as you have a large swell of units and you're able to keep delaying and delaying, you should eventually catch up with the Protoss. And you need to do a late game transition, generally. You need to go into those Ultralisks or those Vipers or those Broodlords or something. You need to get something on the field, and you need to try your best to not let it get scouted. Because once it gets scouted, then it's going to be semi-dealt with. Like, you still have a chance to win, but it's slightly diminished chance because he knows exactly what you're doing. And scouting information is extremely important in this game. We're going to scoot into a replay now. It's, again, one of my replays. I'll say again, if you guys have any replays, submit them to me at ant_b356@me.com. I'll be posting that in the description of the YouTube video that I'll be uploading later tonight or maybe tomorrow. But yeah, please submit them to me. I need replays, guys. Next week's analysis is of the Roach Hydra Lurker style, so I would appreciate any replays you have of that. Anyway, let's get into this replay. So here we are on Iron Fortress LE with the best spawn positions in the game. Cross spawns. Cross spawns lead to a lot of economic focus, and it means that both players can play semi-greedy and get up exactly what they want. Again, we'll see the same standard build order that I displayed in the last game. Gateway, 16 gas, 17 gas, Forge, Cyber. All just very, very standard stuff. You can do cute things like walling in your pylon, like I did, and it just makes it less dangerous against Zergling pressure and that sort of thing. Yeah, but you chrono boost out your +1 and you get it so ridiculously fast. In the Zerg's court, he's playing hatch first into pool. Again, standard stuff. I should have scouted with a probe a little bit earlier, but you can throw down your Nexus from here. You're not really scared of Zerglings if you have this early Adept out, because Adepts deal with Zerglings so well. You can throw down your pylon, start to get your wall up. You already have the Forge, so you can throw down cannons behind that wall. He goes for a fast third base, which is very standard for Zergs in Legacy of the Void right now. But with 2 Adepts and a Mothership Core, you can start playing a little bit aggressive on the map. You get your Twilight Council, of course, very early. +1 upgrades very early. And despite the high amount of things that this player has been going for in the early static defense to stop Adepts from doing too much stuff, I'm still able to do cute little things with these Adepts. I can't necessarily pressure without losing my Adepts, so I come to the third base, which I scouted, and now I'm just going to snipe Larva. You can set up these Adepts just outside the range of the hatch, but they'll shoot the larva that comes out, which is a pretty sick interaction. You just throw in a bunch of gateways from now, you get Adept shields, and you get +2. Once Adept shields is done, you start playing aggressive, and this is so important. You have to be playing aggressive, or else you're going to have a very hard time transitioning into the mid-late game. Because you need to do some sort of economic damage, you need to force out a bunch of units rather than drones, all that sort of good stuff. Now, the Zerg player deals with this very well. He has a large amount of queens, he's got a good amount of creep spread, and he's got a lot. Wait, did I already say lings? Oh, lord, I'm losing my mind. He has a lot of lings and a lot of queens, and if we see, this pushes this back very nicely. I can force to build out the queens, but I still can't trade with the lings. These lings don't even have speed, it's just that he has such a big number of them that I can't deal with them quite fast enough. And that's a big problem for me. Now for the Zerg player, this is very good. He has a slightly lower drone count than normal, but he's still ahead of me on the economy. And this buys him a lot of time to get roaches out, to get his upgrades out, very fast upgrades. And these fast upgrades are starting to become on par with mine. I have +2, and 1/1 is essentially equivalent to +2. If you're the Protoss player in this situation, you need to be picking off what you can, you need to be pressuring still, you need to be forcing more units out and less drones. If you see, he's still not really saturating his third base, which is exactly what you want as a Protoss player. If you scout a bunch of roaches, of course you start going into Immortals, which is a standard. But look at what the Zerg player is doing in this replay right now. Look at what he's doing. He's getting so many Ravagers out. He's keeping his creep spread between his natural and third base extremely well. Despite my moving forward and sniping off the creep tumors, he's still keeping that up. He's got a large amount of lings, he's got a large amount of roaches, and he's generally retaining his units while forcing me away from his base. This is very important, very smart by our Zerg player. He's forcing me back, and he's forcing me away, and as long as I can't do any damage... Look at this! Look! Oh my god. No, I'm gonna stop for a second. Oh my god. Oh! Craigasm. You see that? He's using Corrosive Bile to zone me out. That's so smart. He's delaying. He's buying time. He's getting his upgrades equivalent to mine. He's getting a comparable army supply. In fact, he's 50 supply ahead of me right now. He's keeping me off of his third base. He's keeping me away from his mineral lines, and he's preventing my pressure from containing him too much. Sure, he can't move out on the map as much as he wants, but he is surviving. He's maintaining. He was at a deficit in both tech, supply, and also slightly in economy, but he's pulling it back through smart zoning, smart play, and he's able to keep me at bay. That's so good. Those zoning corrosive biles, oh, so good. They're so good. I love these zoning corrosive biles. such a smart play by him. And as long as he's able to keep me out of his third base, as long as he's able to keep me out of his mineral lines and keep me from doing what I want to, I'm going to continue to fall farther and farther behind, because my third base is only just now finishing up as compared to his. He's got enough Ravagers where he can consistently pressure me away from this. And you just keep trying to trade efficiently. You push him back as much as you possibly can with these Corrosive Biles. If you get force fielded, Corrosive Bile, he has to back up or risk taking an insane amount of damage. And look at this. Now, he's got so many Roaches, so many Ravagers, that he's forced me back home to my base. So smart. I love the way the Zerg player played in this game. I actually played this game about 20 minutes before the show. It was absolutely perfect. I couldn't not show this game. But this shows the strength of the upgrade advantage. My +3 finishes up relatively shortly, but I have +2 against his 1-1, and despite this slightly bigger force, I'm able to trade very efficiently with Adept Shield upgrades. Okay, not very efficiently, but I'm able to survive here. If this was Heart of the Swarm, I would have lost the game here. I don't have Photon Overcharge, I lost all my Immortals, I don't have Blink yet, but because I have very strong, very good upgrades here, I'm able to continue trading well with these Roaches, with these Ravagers, and I'm able to survive, which is the most important part. From here, I just throw on more Gateways, I throw on more static defense at my home, throw on more Immortals, and continue to apply the pressure. I should start to move out here relatively soon. And he's going for more Roaches, more Ravagers. Again, so smart, trying to zone me out as much as possible, try to prevent all of the damage possible. Sort of pulled him out of position here and did some cute stuff, but this is the sort of harass you need to be doing in Legacy of the Void that I am particularly bad at, is you just need to have stuff on the map, keep him pressured and at home, and maybe not making as many drones as he wants to. But from here, we get charge, and we get +1 armor, and then after this, you'll see the transition into +1 shields. I'll compare the build times and stuff like that later, but relatively shortly, now that I have a big swell of sentries again, I'm going to be moving out on the map. Zerg player just doing his standard stuff, and look at this, like, he doesn't even need to necessarily tech up a lot more than he has already. He's already in a good spot tech-wise, and he's at a spot where he can still sort of deal with my stuff. Here it is, the Scouting DT Shrine, boys. Just want to see what he's transitioning into. Because this is the scary part of the game for the Protoss player. If we look, I haven't been in his main base yet. I'm only just now scouting it with this observer right here. You could have gotten this observer a little bit earlier, but essentially it still stands. I've not scouted his natural base. I only have a slight amount of info on his fourth base. He could be hiding tech in any of these places right here, and I wouldn't know what it is. And the DT Shrine, as well as the Stargate here, are essentially here to prevent me from dying to something stupid. I don't want to die to some dumb transition that I have no idea about. I don't want to die to something I haven't seen yet. I want to be able to transition out of my early game gateway forces into something higher tier and potentially counter what he has to offer. But he's playing a decision that the Zerg player can make, and he's not transitioning out of the Roach Ravager tier. This isn't bad. The Zerg has an exponential... Okay, not exponential, but he has a plethora of options, right? The Zerg player has a lot of options from this position. He can transition Hive. He can get Hydras. He can transition into Spire, Infestation Pit. He has so many options against this sort of style, and it's the Protoss player that has to play reactive here. He has to find out what the Zerg player is doing and get the tech to counter it. Or you need to see that the Zerg player is not transitioning, and then you need to not transition yourself. Because if you spend too much money and too much time transitioning, there's a good chance you'll get overrun by the early tech of the lower tier of the Zerg player. But on the Zerg player side of things, you just need to be taking efficient engagements, right? You need to be in a situation where you can trade your Roaches and your Ravagers with the Stalkers and Adepts and Sentries, and you mainly need to do that with, like I said before, the zoning Corrosive Biles. If he ever gets too close to you, throws down too many force fields, you need to hit him with those zoning Corrosive Biles. You need to be harassing his other bases so that you draw the attention away. While his attention is drawn away, you move in, you attack his army. If he's paying attention, zone him out with the Corrosive Bile, back up. Try it again and again and again, and you just try and multitask your way to victory. Try and tear him apart. You're not playing against robots. You're playing against human players. They make mistakes. They have a limited attention span. They can only pay attention to so many things at once. If you pull him apart and pick him apart, you're going to be able to trade well with his army, and you're going to be able to beat his army in a very, very convincing fashion. And that's what we see here, almost. I was able to kind of pull it back in a little bit of a clutch way, but we see again here, we see exactly what I outlined. He's not transitioning out, but he's got a large number of roaches and ravagers. He's got a beautiful concave. One Corrosive Bile, I back up. Another line of Corrosive Bile, I back up. It's just this zoning play that you can do over and over and over again. I take a good engagement, have to back up Corrosive Bile. It's just over and over and over again that he throws down those Corrosive Biles. You're forced to back up as the Protoss player, because you can't lose your army like that. You can't lose your sentries, you can't lose your stalkers, and you end up taking so much damage on all of your units. And we see here, I'm not paying attention. I don't micro my units. He gets on top of me one time, and this could be game, you see? Like, he's doing so much damage. He's killed all of my sentries. My Mothership Core isn't quite in position. Luckily, I had DTs here and ended up winning because he didn't have any detection at all, because he didn't scout my DT shrine. But we see, like, he traded so efficiently there. He killed a lot of sentries. I only have a handful of sentries left. I have 5 out of the original, like, 9. But yeah, it's just like, it's that pick apart style that the Zerg player needs to do that'll really set you up to win the game. Yeah. Alright, so this has been episode 2 of Cracking the Shell, where we crack the shell, oh yeah, of competitive Legacy of the Void. This week's episode, again, was on the One Gate Forge, how it works, how to deal with it, and how to transition out of it. Thank you guys so much for watching. Be sure to drop a follow if you haven't already. Be sure to check out my YouTube channel at youtube.com/antb356. If you missed any part of this, I'll have the VODs uploaded later tonight or possibly tomorrow. Depends on how much I'm paying attention to that and if I feel like doing it. But they will definitely be uploaded. That's the thing. So, next week, we're going to be doing the Roach Hydra Lurker composition, excuse me. Send me your replays. Please God, I can't play Zerg to save my life. We're going to be analyzing the Roach Hydra Lurker composition, again, with the same format. How does it work? How do you beat it? How do you transition out of it? That sort of thing. We're going to be analyzing that, but please God, send me your replays. Nobody in this world wants to see me play Zerg. It's awful. It's sad. It's a tragedy, really. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Drop a follow here. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. Be sure to check out last week's episode if you have not seen it yet. That was the 2 Gate into Cyber that introduced the Gateway Immortal composition. Be sure to check out next week's episode when that happens. It will be same time, same place, Monday at 5 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'll have a post on Reddit, that sort of thing. Anyway, I'm going to head out, guys. Thank you so much. See y'all next time.